It's all alchemy.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's what I mean when I talk about fire. Like you're setting yourself on fire. It's like you're intentionally like reversing that power, that energy in the body to go in the right direction so that it can turn into like you're deleting I love what you said before. You're deleting memory so that you have space for like insight and wisdom.
All right, Meena, thank you so much for being on the show with us. It's great to have you. You've got your fascinating TikTok channel there where you're talking about Srividya Tantra. Now, we're kind of new to this on our end, and I'm sure with our array of audiences, listeners out there, they might be new to this too. Maybe we could start a bit there with learning some of the philosophies and ideas around the practice.
Yeah, so Srividya Tantra is the worship of Shakti. So there are quite a few traditions in India that worship Shakti, which is the mother goddess, as a means to attain liberation. But Srividya is kind of a more like relatively recent synthesis of like different tantric philosophy that takes like many different streams of thought, Shakta thought, tantric thought, and it sort of like condenses everything into this really sophisticated system that helps the practitioner attain liberation through the worship of Shakti.
You know, it's interesting when you think of Tantra, a lot of people think of kind of like the sexualized aspect of Tantra, just probably out of ignorance and stuff like that. I'm probably one of those guys. But there's much more to it than that. What is it outside of that that makes it unique within those practices?
Like what makes Tantra unique?
Yeah, yeah. From some of the other spiritual practices that are out there.
Yeah, I would say it very readily engages with the shadowy aspects of our psyche. And it's oh gosh, I could say so much about this, but it really it deals with desire head on, right?
Mm,
You guys have had discussions about other spiritual traditions. There is this like age-old thought that we should detach from things in order to attain enlightenment. But in this day and age, that becomes quite difficult for many people, especially since we're in what's called the Kali Yuga. Are you familiar with
hmm
this term?
hmm
Yeah. Yeah, especially since we're in the Kali Yuga, and that like the deeper psychological meaning of Kali Yuga is that the Maya is very, very thick. So that means that detaching is not really it doesn't go over well for many people. So that's why this is a more like recent synthesis. It acknowledges this problem, Srividya Tantra and Tantra
hmm
in general. And it just gives you a more sophisticated way. It's like, hey, like, okay, yes, you have desire, you have things you want to get done in the world. Your desire is eclipsing your path to liberation. Well, what happens if we show you that actually desire is the means for liberation? Your impetus to want to experience joy and pleasure actually is your impetus to want to experience God, to know that you are God. So that's what makes Tantra different.
It sounds like in some sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's like hands-on with the shadowy stuff. Like because yeah, like there could have been practices that emerged that were like what do you call that when you like turn earthly desires away? What is that called? Asceticism or whatever?
Mysticism, yeah.
Yeah, but this is kind of like we're going to be brave about this and encounter these things, it seems like we're going to actually meet these things because society pulls us in all kinds of different directions. This at the same time, it's moralizing at us about a lot of our inherent desires. It's
Yeah.
providing means of satisfying those inherent desires. And so we're pushed and pulled, we're contracted and we're you know what I mean? And it seems like maybe if I'm getting this right, that your practice actually addresses that. Instead of turning a blind eye to it, seems to encounter it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a spectrum like in how you can encounter it because it really depends on the person. For some people, that might mean that they have to engage with certain objects physically, but you
Hmm.
don't actually have to do that to engage with the shadow. And that's also like a very subtle point about Tantra that I find very beautiful, that there is a way to engage with these desires internally, in
Mm.
fact. It
Hmm.
doesn't mean, for example, like we were just talking about sex. It doesn't mean you have to go out there and, engage in the act constantly and be like, oh, I'm going to become enlightened through this act. I'm going to do it over and over again. That's ridiculous. So instead,
You'd be
there's a
walking
way
around with a vibe. You'd be glowing, but with a weird energy.
to be a creep. That's called being
Yeah,
a
yeah,
creep.
yeah, yeah.
And there are many out there like that.
Well, it's innocently somebody trying to find their own, like that's they honestly think that for a lot of people they probably think that's where happiness is or whatever.
Yeah,
And but yeah, what you said about the interior world to me that's interesting because it's like a huge chunk of this, maybe all of it, but at least in a high 90s ends up being an internal thing anyway. So
exactly.
to go inward and settle that battle inside or whatever, seems like the work across a lot of traditions, really, I think if you look in the right spaces. But
Yeah.
you were also pointing out the thickness of Maya, and it's really weird because sometimes I feel like it's like reality doesn't want to wake up to itself because it feels like the more knowledge it gets, the more insight like it's giving itself. We've never lived in a time with more distraction. What's going on? Like it's like you have these two forces that uh, I don't know. They seem to be fighting, and it seems like it's escalating.
Yeah, what two forces do you mean?
Like the idea of like awakening or becoming liberated versus the idea of Maya and being in distraction and illusion and not being able to see what is true.
Well, this is a really interesting point. So, let me talk about the Kali Yuga for a
Sure.
second, because the theory of the yugas is that and just so you guys understand, the timescales that we're working with in Indian scripture are different from like what we might talk about in evolutionary biology or whatever.
It's like hundreds of thousands of
Exactly.
years and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
Yeah.
like hundreds of thousands of years. So the idea is that humanity actually started out much more like peaceful and in a more like evolved version of itself. So people lived in truth. And then as humanity went on, truth decayed, like this sense of like morality, this sense of ethics, it decayed as like human beings went on. My opinion is that we as humans have actually devolved. I don't think we've really evolved. Even though we have more things, like we made advancements, I don't think that means that we've actually evolved. So, what that means to me is that our conception, our relationship with the world has actually become so thick that, like, we've begun to believe, like, we've begun to languish in this delusion that I need more. I need more things. Like I basically the human mind has forgotten that it's in divine relationship to every aspect of existence. It's forgotten it's like oneness with existence. So in the beginning, when things are good, when things are like, when society's good and like everyone's honest with each other, you're not really asking yourself, what do I need to do to wake up? So the way out of it is actually harder. So that's when, like, in these texts, you would see stories about these sages, like, completing these difficult ascetic practices for like thousands of years.
Mm.
One of my favorite stories is about Parvati when she did her penance to obtain Lord Shiva as her husband. It's said in the Shiva Purana that she did penance for 3,000 years.
That's
Right.
like a badass trip. I was a ceiling fan for 100 years.
Something like, I guess so. I guess so. Yeah.
No, I'm being profane about it, but yeah.
All good,
Yeah.
all good. Yeah, no one has time for that now. But They say actually in the Kali Yuga that it's easier to wake up, and the only thing you really need to do is recite the names of God. It's that easy.
Mm,
Sounds like an advertisement, but yeah, it's
mm,
because the suffering today, the distractions that you're talking about, like we're pulled in all these different directions. The suffering is so like palpable. We're like, okay, I need to wake up. Like th
mm,
th this can't be happening to me. And like
mm,
we're living in a time where it's like atrocities are being committed every single day, and we're like, how? Like how could we possibly be living like this? Like I have to snap out of this like Maya.
mm,
So there's a purpose to it. There's a purpose to, I think, like things getting so out of control, because if we didn't eventually start destroying ourselves as human beings, we wouldn't have this impetus to wake up.
mm. Yeah. I wonder about like what large scale awakening would be like for humans, and yeah, I just think there's kind of no way to know. Um like without being in it. But it's true. A lot of things that seem to course correct humanity are like
Yeah.
a need to. And in culture nowadays, when we see all this availability, like we are at the cutting edge. We're the Jetsons. We're at the cutting edge of it's never been more future than it is right now. And because of that, we have what we've done is we've like hyperinflated opulence. So like if you want whatever you want, you could go find it. And it's the distance between wanting something and getting it is so short. And it reminds me of something that sometimes people I'm surprised have never heard of, which is the idea of loving your sin to death, which to me is like a very dangerous as a practice. I don't think like nobody should be prescribing that. Like go love your sin to death because that's dangerous. You could hurt yourself. You could kill yourself loving certain sins to death. But it's
Yeah.
something that seems to play out like sometimes when you see hyper vanity, like, and you'll see it in past decades, past iterations of people, you'll be like, they were really doing this to death till they got sick of it. And
Yeah.
maybe if we're in Kali Yuga, part of that is people exhausting carnal desire to get to that point where they go, what the hell? Like some of the conclusion for some people isn't I never got what I wanted. It's what do I do? Like technically I did. If I really think about it, I've pretty much achieved everything I could ever want. In some measure, it's available to a lot of us, all kinds of extreme goals that would have been magical 100 years ago. Now we can get it. And so when you have everything and you notice that the result of that is like not a more robust character, but actually like I'm soft as shit. I can't handle anything. I'd be useless if they dropped me into a tribe. They'd be like, he's an idiot. He can't even like catch fish or light a fire. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But we're sitting like kings with everything we could, kings and queens, and we got all this stuff, and we're going, why does it feel empty? What's going on here? Like I should be satisfied, but I'm actually, I feel like I need more depression pills. I need more whiskey and stuff. You know what I mean? I'm just reflecting what I think sometimes happens in an affluent culture. And
Yeah.
then the final frontier avails itself, which is like going inward and enter true spirituality, not club spirituality, not I can become this helps my political career spirituality, but like true, I got to figure this thing out because I'm suffering now in all this opulence. I hope that was so long-winded. Sorry. I hope it made some sense though. Yeah.
Absolutely made sense. Yeah. So, I don't know if you've heard this belief that's stated in both Hindu and Buddhist thought, but they say that it is a great blessing to be born as human.
Mm.
It's not
Oh
a
yeah.
chance that comes around a lot. And they say human in contrast to being born in the ghost realm, and then in contrast to being born in the realm of the gods.
Oh
So it's
wow.
like, yeah, so the real meaning of that is that if you are born human, you are right at that happy midpoint where you don't have everything, but you know just enough suffering that you can work yourself out of it. Because if you have everything, and we see people like that in our world, not to say that you couldn't have everything and
Yeah.
find a way out. I think there are
Yeah.
people like that who just don't make it public.
Yeah,
But
it's not a criticism against nice things.
yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends on what you do with it. It's
Yeah.
very, it's up to the individual. But if you're resourced enough that you're not like, oh my God, when is my next meal? Or do I have to protect myself against this like next airstrike? For example, like basically, if you're not in a state of desperation, you've got space to contemplate and to do real spiritual work. And then if you're not in the realm of the gods, you're not so distracted by pleasure that you don't think that like, oh, well, like I would never want to leave this. Like I'm happy where I am, not really, but like there's no like impetus to attain liberation. So that's why they say like you need this being born as a human. And in Hindu mythology they always say like even gods are want to be born as humans so that they have a chance to work out their
Hilarious.
karma in this realm because it's just heavy enough here.
This is
um
where it's at. This is where it's at. Like it's I even think about like Jesus when they were asking him, because people interpret Jesus certain ways, and that's the religion we grew up in. We're not like practicing Christians, but I always have scripture rattling around my head still. And I think about when they were like, "What's it gonna be like when we die, Jesus?" Like the people came to him, and he was like, "You'll be like the angels." And people wouldn't read it that way. They wouldn't read it that that's how he said it, like hand waving. Like they'd be like, "You'll be like the angels. You'll be neither male nor female, and you will not be given into marriage." But
Mm,
I like to put my own spin on it that he was like dismissing it, like focus on this. Never
mm,
mind that. What do you think of angels? When's the last time you saw an angel? They're largely symbolic. It could be anything. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
we don't have access to what these giant Lovecraftian gods in the heavens are up to, but we're here and we have this weird, unique capability that even the other animals around us don't have, which is like self-reflection. Like, what the hell? Like I'm here. You know what I mean? That's so unique, it seems like, even on our planet. Like, um, that's unique.
Yeah.
No wonder the gods would want a piece of that. Because, like you said, maybe the way the gods exist plays out just like an automatic story. It's a given. You know what I mean? We sit around and clink golden cup,
Yeah, exactly.
goblets together.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like, why would you ever want to end that? But then it's just samsara. It's another form of samsara over and over
Mm.
again. It comes with its own problems. You become numb. That's the other thing about like experiencing pleasure, like worldly pleasure all the time. You get numb to it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
worst because you're like, oh my God, like where do I get my next hit?
Yeah, there's
But
there's
God is
some
the
real
greatest
gotta
thing.
be neuroscience involved with that because we're mammalian or whatever. And so I think that we have some proclivity, like, for survival, like most of human history was fraught with like hunger and food scarcity. So no wonder there's people that are like extremely obese going around because that thing is hyper, like sugar good, sugar equals life, salt, fat, whatever. And
Yeah.
then we can't, and then you become numb to it like any kind of addiction where the first one is mind-blowing and awesome, and then that circuitry of going out and getting more of it, the stakes just get higher and higher and higher, and you can't recapture it. It's almost like a healthy amount of tension or a healthy amount of just tolerating the downsides of the ups and downs of neurochemistry is good. Like, hey,
Yeah.
instead of trying to solve, like, you turn on any media and it'll be like, do you got a slight headache? Buy these pills. Do you slightly feel like something's not quite exactly right? Here's how to fix it. Instead of just tolerating the clouds of, oh, that's a little bit of sadness moving through my system. Oh, it's a little bit of like rage. Weird. Where'd that come from? We
Mhm.
instead were bombarded by means of alleviating it because we're mammals and we like are sort of taught and programmed and learned and veered towards safety and comfort and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why, like today we talk about having this toned nervous system because it's what you're talking about. It's like being able to tolerate the ups and downs and to remain like equanimous in
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it's funny because I oftentimes with a lot of religions think they were ahead of stuff. They were the schools of thought that were addressing some of these things. But what language stays stagnant? Go back 200 years to the English language and it's like not recognizable. Like it sounds so different, I think. Maybe not 200 years, maybe a little longer than that, but there's like old English where it starts to not even sound the same. So you know, what science describes now oftentimes is probably mirroring a lot of what they were alluding to in the past already, just with different, little bit of different language, and we've carried it with us through time, and now we have to kind of interpret it, and
Yeah.
you know,
It's a different, like more material, like
yeah,
gross level system,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious about the kind of the secretive nature of your practice and the fact that you're on social media. What are you hoping to get out of sharing the parts that you're allowed to share on social media?
That's such a great question. Yeah, actually, I got on social media to promote my book that I'm writing. I didn't really know how else I was going to market it, and I have this great resource at hand, social media. So, yeah, I just got on there to start talking about Srividya Tantra. My other objective is that right now there is, we're talking about living in dark times, and we're talking about like a collective awakening. There are many people who are waking up to their own like spiritual paths. It doesn't have to be Srividya Tantra, but I'm so fascinated by how divine feminine and occult practices show up all around the world. Like, how are people waking up around the world? And through social media, I've been able to connect with others from different paths and also like learn more about their paths. Like, for example, like one thing I love learning about is pagan religions, like Celtic religions, Norse religion, how the people we call white today, like their ancestral practices, like what did their ancestors practice, and like how did the Western world come to be what it is? Just as an example, like these are all things that um, I am using TikTok for.
Hmm.
Um, Now, like when it comes to the more secretive stuff, yeah, there's stuff I'm not going to talk about on social media. Like people have asked me some questions. I keep that stuff quiet. But I think people can still benefit from learning about like the goddess Kali, for example. Like there is so much misunderstanding around Kali. I don't think a lot of people knew the goddess Lalita, who is at the center of Srividya Tantra. It also gives me an opportunity as an Indian person to clear up misconceptions about Tantra and actually give like traditional Tantra a voice instead of letting the neo-tantrics like say whatever they want on social media. So there's a lot of purpose. I love connecting with people. I love talking, as you can hear.
Yeah.
And Yeah, no, it's pretty great. I think it's definitely like part of my dharma to do.
You mentioned your sisterhood there, like the yoginis or whatever. Is that what they're called? Are you called like a yogini, someone who like the practitioner, the person who's practicing?
Yes, yeah, yogini is a term for a woman who is practicing tantra, who's
Okay,
a
yeah.
liberated from her
And
goal.
so how, like, are you allowed to talk about like how you become a part of that? Or is it like an initiation? Do you have to be asked to come out and assessed and like how does that all work?
I think normally probably yes. I think back in the day maybe, but as far as I know, I haven't experienced anything like that. I have been formally initiated into Sri Vidya Tantra. You probably heard me referring to my yogini sisters
Yeah.
on my platform. That is me like referring to my friends who also practice. We didn't initiate each other. It was more just like we connected and we're all on the same path. And we
Yeah.
experienced so many of the same things and have felt so outside of like normal life that like I recognized these women to be my yogini sisters. That's it, really.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
It's good to have that kind of camaraderie and safety and stuff like that, man. That's so valuable because that's where you can get into the deep stuff, I think. You
Yeah.
know? It's interesting that you mentioned like researching like white people's like original spiritual base because it's like, I think sometimes people forget that like Jesus was probably brown or black or whatever. Not that that's like a thing. You know what I mean? All I'm saying is like sometimes you get this cartoonish image that somebody will be like, Jesus is American or something, or like Jesus is, stands for whiteness, and you're like, he is Middle East or whatever, you know what I mean? Like he's a Hebrew. And then you think about what happened prior to that. What were people believing before the explosion of the Christian religion into the West? What were those same folks practicing? And I actually don't know much about it, but I do know of like a couple of people who, like many people in the West, like grew up in the Catholic Church and then kind of were like, this doesn't seem for me. I'm kind of this just, and then they started investigating their sort of Celtic roots, and then you could see that something with them resonated. You know what I mean? And I don't know myself much about that. Like I don't know what is it? What would we have been practicing prior to like belief in fairies or something, or belief in changelings? What did you unearth with that interest?
Well, it seems like a lot of these pagan traditions were very connected to the earth, for example, and connected to you. You probably would have been more in tune with your ancestors,
Ah,
and depending on what part of the world your ancestors were from, you'd be worshiping a different set of gods. I know, for example, like um, in what's today the United Kingdom, they practice druidry. That was their way of like connecting to nature. Like these were like the wizards of that time. In if you were Scandinavian, like what is today Scandinavia, you had satyr, you had vulvas who were like women like oracles that were like widely respected by kings, warriors, etc. It really varies, but it's actually so similar to modern day Hinduism. In fact, I
hmm.
think that when I see people who, from the Western world who like come to Hinduism or like Buddhism, I really feel like they maybe unconsciously are reaching back towards there's like a longing for their own ancestral practice, that connection with the earth, like connection with these different gods, the divine feminine, etc. But they find that still living in Indian traditions.
Now Lolita seems to be the heart of what you're practicing there. What can you tell us about the goddess Lolita?
Yeah, Lalita is, well, she's described as the empress of the universe. She's also described as the mother of all beings. So, if in this in the tantric view, God has like two faces. There would be like the masculine, more neuter face. We would call that Shiva, and then you'd say that there is Shakti. And according to Shakta Tantra traditions, Shakti precedes everything. Shiva comes second. So Lalita is the embodiment of this primordial principle that created everything. Like she is the womb from which like all beings emerge, from which all things, all experience emerge. She is the like the creator of the entire universe, but all of that is encapsulated in this like very beautiful, very erotic goddess. She is the embodiment of Shringara, which is eroticism. So like supreme eroticism. That is Lalita, because there would be no world if she did not desire for there to be a world.
Oh, that's deep stuff. I'm fascinated also kind of with the like from your perspective. Some people take this stuff as kind of like symbolic, metaphorical,
Hmm.
like these gods, and some people truly believe that they're real living entities, powers that are. How how do you see these gods and the structure of the universe in as it relates to your reality, science, what you know about the universe as a whole? How do you take all of it?
That's a really great question. So if you ask me about these gods and goddesses, I believe that they are real. They're like true entities, and they are like they have embodied forms, but they are also the repository of these divine principles. And God is powerful. God is infinitely powerful, the source of all power. God can take whatever form she wants. So if she wants to take an embodied form, or if she wants to appear as a human, or if she wants to appear as a goddess or a dog, she can be whatever she wants. So yes, my belief is that when we worship Lalita, we are worshiping an actual goddess. She's not like a symbol of something for me.
All right. And you believe she's the God? Like God or one
She's a
of
face
many?
of God. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's a face. Lalita is a face that she takes, yes, as is Shiva, as are all of these gods.
Oh,
It's
okay.
interesting because this is a very, very deep question. And every being is a form of God. Every being is a complete form of God. One of the best explanations I've ever heard is that there are some beings that like are a very clear mirror to show you what God actually is. Like not even if every being is a complete form of God, it doesn't mean that every being can show you or reflect God, because God obviously has the capacity to hide itself as well. So a deity like Lalita or Shiva or Kali would be able to reflect like a certain aspect of God more clearly. And we as devotees can attune to that. We can like attune to their power as a way to find the divine within ourselves.
Hmm. You had mentioned karma a little ways back there. And I was when I was watching your videos and listening to the, burning through karma and all that stuff that you were kind of talking about. I don't know a ton about karma. I kind of see it as like I might have this wrong, but sometimes as like reaping what you sow in life. But maybe you could talk a little bit about karma and how we're supposed to deal with it from your perspective.
Yeah, okay, yes, the reaping what you sow thing. That is, I would say it's like more of a, it's like an incomplete understanding of what karma is. Karma, especially when I talk about burning karma, I'm talking about burning up your psychic material. So all the stuff that's in your mind, in your psyche, that is stopping you from understanding your union with God. And it's really simple. It starts with this I thought. Like, we radiate this sense of I-ness. That's the basic like non-dual teaching. Now, when that I-ness turns into I am James or I am Justin, and then everything else blossoms from that. You get this whole like illusion of you being in this reality, us sitting here. There are many layers of thoughts that lead to this idea of us sitting here in this room on this Zoom call having this podcast, right? So imagine if in this moment we wanted to like peel back all those layers to undo that idea. Like, yes, we're sitting here having a conversation, going back to I am God. Like, all that is present here is God. That is the process of burning karma. So, if you want to like talk about this reaping what you sow idea, that part of it is true, but at a deeper level, what it means is that say you are an evil politician, and you commit many atrocities. Many atrocities are committed in your name.
I can't think of one like that.
I can't think of a very one either.
Well, that was kind of mean, but anyway.
So, say that's the life you've lived. Now, of course, in Hinduism, Buddhism, we have this idea of reincarnation. You cycle through samsara, wanting to experience things in life again and again, and at some point, you're going to want ultimate freedom. Now, if you have lodged somewhere in your psyche these memories of having committed these atrocities, it's because your mind was so thick of illusion that you forgot that there are other beings here and that they experience pain. You forgot that consciousness exists also outside of your own being. Like you were so contracted. So usually what The divine doesn't do this on purpose. This is more of like just a law. It is often that suffering or fire, you have different options for how this can happen, but oftentimes for many people it is suffering that helps dislodge this delusion from the mind and helps the mind like expand. And it's really interesting. Okay, I'm going to talk about psychedelics for just a
Go
second.
for it. Go
Do
for
Yeah,
it.
I'm actually not exactly their biggest advocate, but a long time ago, someone told me about how psychedelics, they're actually what they do is they destabilize the mind so that you can temporarily have this like expanded experience. And that's really what's happening. Like what you want to do actually is to dislodge karma, to expand your sense of like awareness. You destabilize. Now, in my opinion, tantric practice does this much more effectively in a way where the experience, the knowledge, the wisdom that you gain from it can actually last. So suffering is one way to do that if you integrate it properly. But through tantric practice, like when you turn the mind back on self nature, you have those like temporary moments of nirvana, then those karmas actually start to come loose and you begin to like in a more solid way, in a more like long lasting way, you begin to integrate this knowledge that yes, I am self, I am God.
it. Are there any of the practices, like the tantric practices, that you're allowed to talk about or allude to in terms of like helping people to figure this out?
Yeah, yeah. So, a big part of my practice is mantra chanting. I chant mantras for an hour a day. I do puja for an hour a day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll talk about that. So, these mantras are usually kept secret. You can find them on the internet if you want to, but they're only to be chanted with initiation. So, when you chant these mantras, you're attuning to that frequency. The mantra is a particular frequency. And by chanting them every day, you attune your body and your psyche to that frequency, instead of this material plane frequency that we're on, where like we have these like delusions and distractions and karmas. And as you start to attune to this different frequency, then this knowledge, this wisdom slowly starts to settle in your body. And of course, there's like an integration period. That's why you have to like chant every single day and you have to let your Maya come undone little by little every single day. So that would be one tantric practice that's really important, and it's actually important across all of tantric
What is
practice.
it about chanting? Because this isn't the only spiritual practice that I know, like Hare Krishnas, and I know there's other people, there's other Hindu practices, and even in Christian churches they do similar things. What is it about?
Speaking in tongues.
Yeah, what is it about mantras, the chanting these things that help? Is it doing something psychological to us by repeating the same thing over and over? Like we're like embedding things into our brain that are,
Is there a science to it?
yeah.
I don't know too much about the science of it. I haven't read much, but it's about the frequency. So I can tell you the meaning of the word mantra. Like man, the root is mind, and
Mm.
tra is vehicle. So it is a vehicle for the mind. And we exist on a certain like we're tuned into a particular radio station down here. We're tuned into a particular radio station here, like in this conversation that we're having. But we want to tune into wisdom,
Mm.
reality. We want to tune into God instead. The mantra can help you do that. And the mantra will like have its own way of taking you there.
Do you understand the words of the mantra that you're speaking? Like, do you know the meaning of the words?
I don't know Sanskrit, but I've studied enough like scripture to know quite a few of the
Oh,
words.
okay. I
Yeah.
remember I saw Duncan Trussell on one of his podcasts because he's into all kinds of different things. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah.
He's like a comedian, but he's like he's like a spiritual comedian or whatever. But he was talking about practicing mantras, and I think it might have been on the Joe Rogan podcast or something. He was like, "Well, give me a little taste or whatever." And Duncan Trussell was like, "Omni mi kata," but it was like he started reciting one, and it was really impressive. But
Mhm.
it's like I was just curious. Like, there's so many words, you know what I mean? Like, I was just curious if you knew what those words meant for the mantras
Mhm.
that you speak or whatever. Maybe it doesn't
Some
even matter. Maybe
some
it's
of
better to not know the
Mhm.
words.
Well, I mean, these mantras, they on the surface, they're like astonishingly beautiful poetry. But
Oh
the
yeah,
brilliance is that like there are like certain frequencies embedded within the mantra.
right.
So like one thing I can say is that in Srividya, there are what are called like these building block syllables that you chant. And think about it like this. So in the beginning, there was nothing, there was no movement, if you can call it a beginning. And within like consciousness, it began to vibrate like just a little bit with certain like building blocks, right? Kind of like if you can imagine 0, 1, 2, 3, like those are like the building blocks of numbers. These are like the building blocks of reality. So when you chant these syllables, you remind the mind, oh, this is the origin. This is, you kind of like work the mind backwards all the way to formless consciousness. So that's
Hmm.
one purpose of
Hmm.
chanting these mantras.
It's weird. What do you think about people that kind of go rogue? They go like they go freelance spirituality. Like there's a person out there right now that just freshly kicked a cigarette addiction and he's driving in his truck and he's got Alan Watts blasting. He's shuffling through prayer beads in one hand and he's just going, oh, oh. He's just trying to burn his way through as much karmic energy as he can burn, because like sometimes there's I think when you go into practice, like I've always intuited certain things, like I call it dad yoga because sometimes I just move my body in a way that feels like it just needs to go this way till something pops. You know what I mean? Don't do that, anybody. But I'm saying I think sometimes there can be an inherent wisdom in people to like glossolalia or speak in tongues or just get something out or express an energy. And sometimes it's as simple as like a need to cry or a need to laugh or and then you do that long enough and I don't know, maybe one of the things you realize is even Jesus, like even all my practices ain't satiating at the end of the day. I'm exhausted from doing them, but but maybe something clicks and it's not certain when it clicks and that's for every individual path when something happens then that God-like consciousness pours through, not saying that insights, it seems like one of the aspects of mantra reciting is like insight download or something like this frees up enough of the space of the mind that insight can birth within the mind,
Yeah.
because otherwise if you're not doing a mantra
Yeah,
for
that's a
most
great
people,
way to put it. Yeah.
if you're doing a mantra, a lot of the time, if you're not doing one in
Mm.
typical day life, you're like, gotta check my email, gotta do that bitch Becky at work. You know what I mean? Like you're overflowed with thoughts. And if you can just say one thing, it actually makes room for insight to start pouring in. And that's why it's fascinating to me. I know, like, I understand the thing about like this is sacred passed down stuff, and it is secretive for a reason, and it's got to be protected. And I understand that whole like, I respect that whole aspect of it. But I'm saying I'm wondering what your thoughts on, like I said, how I started it, like some freelance person that stumbles into it. Is that even possible? Could there be a guy in a desert island that just starts doing beach yoga and mantraing, and next thing you know, he's by himself, no, like traditional practice, but he actually arrives at something. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, at the end of the day, his ego dies of boredom, and something happens. He becomes aware of God. Or does it have to be one particular line of belief and practice and hierarchy? Some of them are bad, some of them are good.
Ooh, yeah, this is it's such an important question. Structure exists to keep people safe. And when things get too structured, it turns into religion. And, that's not, we know what that's like. So take this hypothetical scenario of the sky in the desert, right? So
Whoever he may be.
whoever he may be. So insight can come to anybody. And it just depends on your karma.
Mm.
And we have this belief that if you, well, let's say you're like 20 or 25, you're young, and like you suddenly like know all this stuff about the goddess, or you suddenly like have the non-dual like realization. That is because you did a lot of past life practice, and it is fructifying for you now in this life. So in Hindu thought, we believe that and it says this in the Bhagavad Gita, you don't carry anything with you when you go into your next lifetime but your spiritual practice. That is the only thing you take with you. Of course, you also carry your karmas, etc. But as far as wealth, things, relations, you don't carry those things. So we can't like there could be some madman out there who like suddenly wakes up and the world ridicules him, but he might be onto something real. I think that happens all the time. We have stories in India like that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the structure exists because there's such a thing as spiritual delusion. Like you mentioned, speaking in tongues. A lot of the time, speaking in tongues, like it doesn't mean anything. I don't know. I think it's just like a nervous
Yeah.
system.
Oh, yeah. And I think there's different versions of it.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, there would be guys that would come along and they would pray over you in tongues. Remember that? You'd
Yeah.
be at some event and some guy would be with authority. And he'd be praying over you in tongues. And then the way the Bible describes it is like holy tongues of fire, like some spiritual event just happened. And I'm sure that there's Christians that go, yeah, and man, I've been there. I've been in the auditorium when the spirit came over the preacher and he was speaking in true tongues. There's somebody out there that's swept away with imagination and doing it. And then there's somebody out there going, that's a madman. That's like, it's either that or I've been working on the railroad. They're just glossolalia because there's so much karmic energy in there, you know? Like you talk about that young guy that's like ahead of his time. Like sometimes that's like so strange to see, like a young person that even the knowledge hasn't caught up with where they're already at karmically. You know what I mean? Like they're like, why are you why are you an old sage already? You're 20. You know what I mean? Like it's that type of character shows up. But funny enough, sometimes you can see that like, but you got some knowledge yet to acquire. But your temperament shows somebody that's oddly peaceful because many 20-year-olds, like that 10-year period till 30 is when you like burn that karma out, make bad decisions, learn a bunch of shit because
Yep.
there's so much energy. And sometimes it's almost like sometimes I feel like you risk running the wrong thing if you get somebody that's really they've got like warrior energy and you moralize them to the point where it's like, hey man, get your butt to a thing and you settle down and be quiet and you do your things. They're like imploding on the inside. But some people really get to a point in life, whether they're young, which is seems to be the exception, or they're old, they're a little older and got some life experience, sometimes really old. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're 80. It's like I had to conquer so many kingdoms before I was ready to sit down and do my mantras. I think it's just a personal path thing. But then you get somebody that settles down enough and that karma, whatever the heck that mysterious force is, burns out enough that
Yeah.
it's like, all right, let's start the practice here and let's get some true deep wisdom and some true deep insight and then start leaning towards wisdom rather than like
Yeah.
rather than seeking wisdom, embodied wisdom or something, or
Yeah.
seeking knowledge, embodied knowledge.
Yeah. It's interesting when you were talking about that like scene of someone speaking in tongues and like
The different types, because I'm sure people do all kinds of things for different reasons, you know, like there's somebody out there all out faking it. Like there's somebody out there like performing and it's not real at all. And then there's somebody out there, I wouldn't be surprised if there was somebody that's like, you know, I was 9 and something came over me and I started speaking in tongues. I wouldn't just say you're full of crap. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Off the cuff.
It's tough because for me, I'm like I really I me personally, I tread this like very fine line where I'm like I don't want to invalidate people's experiences, but we've got to discern. And I guess at the
Yeah,
end of the day, we can't really know what someone else's subjective experience is.
right.
My guru used to say that one enlightened person can recognize another. And that's just how that works. And so you could be a madman and be enlightened. And so um, I don't know. I think the important thing is like, are you like, do you subjectively know that you are striving like for your own embodied wisdom? I think that's important to know. Like,
And that's a good question. That's a
yeah.
good question that I think could be answered impulsively, but also could be ruminated on for a while and then
Yeah.
answered at it. Because I mean, especially if you have access to honesty, like you have access, you're safe enough that you feel like you can actually be truthful. The answer might be like no. You know what I mean? Sometimes. And things are only what they are, you know what I mean? But we muddy it up because of fear and our desperation in different directions. But I don't know. What role does honesty play in all this? What role does like self-honesty, I suppose, play?
Well, I mean, you've got to be self-aware enough to know if you're bullshitting yourself, right?
Uh,
And I was also gonna say, like, is sometimes it's good to like have that whack over the head from maybe someone who might know better than you. Of course, how that comes, be discerning about that. There are lots of gurus out there who are no good. You want to be careful about who you listen to,
yeah,
but a good teacher can be like, hey, like you're going down the wrong path here.
I
Uh,
love that. There are gurus out there that are no good. Like it's funny. I actually think you could be probably even enlightened and be no good.
well, you
Like
know
there's
what?
some crazy, if you look at the scriptures of certain enlightened masters and stuff through the past, it's like this guy was crazy. This guy was like a, but yeah. I actually don't think that negates the potential that they were even enlightened or awakened or something, you know?
Yeah, enlightenment does not mean that you're well behaved.
Yeah. Like I love the idea of being friends with the guru. I love the idea of like being like, "What'd you say, guru?" You know what I mean? Like when they what did you say your guru said that one enlightened person can recognize another? Like I love being if I had a guru friend that I was close enough with that I could be like, "Come on, man. Can you really tell though, you know?" One of the things I did when I first came across a lot of this enlightenment stuff, and this is so weird. I don't even know if anybody's ever done this, but like because I didn't always know about enlightenment or I didn't always know about the concept of awareness, awakening. And so I was like, I looked at the characteristics that they talk about associated with enlightenment or awakening, like what typically follows. This is what you can kind of, there's just some patterns there. I made a list of people that I knew already that I figured were enlightened. And sometimes it was crazy. It was like my neighbor in his garage drinking beer. You know what I mean? Like I just made this list because you never, to keep things humble, you know what I mean? Like maybe how do you see without seeing, like doing your best to see it from every kind of angle, you know? Seeing all possibilities.
How do you see what exactly?
Um, uh, Deductive truth or something like that. Like some kind of like the truth that remains if you entertain all sorts of possibilities. Like we're talking about an awakening here, right?
Mhm,
And we
mhm.
covered some pretty crazy things, you know, like the fact that an awakened person might even have some odd characteristics. And then you go, well, what does that say? Like you could get fixated on that one thing and become a Zen devil. Like I'm sure there's people that picked up
Mhm.
the wrong scripture, said, well, this guy drank and was explicit and all kinds of stuff. I guess
Mhm.
that, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, you're like a Zen devil. You know what I mean? But if you weigh that against other things about it, you know what I mean? I just wanted to throw in that weird little quirky anecdote that one of the things in my early thinking about this stuff was I went, well, who already displays those characteristics? And I found that there were people that I knew
Mm.
that weren't spiritual at all. You know what I mean? That had certain qualities like a form of patience. One person might have like crazy patience, or one person might be non-judgmental in an extraordinary way, or another person might be not overly thinking. You know what I mean? Man, how do you just not think all the time? And you know what I mean? So that's like the liberation from a heavy mind, a heavy analytical mind. You know, little liberations. I went off on a tangent. How do we ground this again? Um, what can you say? What do you feel like saying to people about this stuff? Like, what do you like is on your heart to like? I wish people knew this, or I wish I could get this through more clearly to people.
Yeah, I mean,
Something.
yeah, I've touched on it a little bit, but I wish that Tantra could be understood like in its original context, like in the Indian context, because I think that when it lands in the Western mind, it turns into something different. And maybe there's some good in that. And for Tantra to be useful in the West, perhaps maybe some modifications can be made. But yeah, this is what I wish people would understand about Tantra because when they see these fierce goddesses and they see like Kali or Lalita, there are some who make it solely a feminist statement when there's so much more to it. Of course, when people see the erotic aspects, they think that it's a sex thing. And it's like, oh my God. I mean, well, I guess you could fuck around and find out that that's not really going to work for you. Um,
Literally.
yeah, 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 exactly, literally. And there are people who do that
Yeah.
all the time on social
That's
media.
really burning karma out. That's like STD burning karma.
Oh,
That was a
yeah. I
bad
mean,
joke.
that's like a whole karmic test in itself. When I was in Bali, I saw all sorts of forms of this. I also used to live in the Bay Area. I saw people doing this, and it's just so cringe. I was just in Europe for a month. I was in Sweden for 2 weeks. I went for a yoga retreat for New Year, and I met this wonderful woman there. We became like friends very quickly, and she said, when you told me you practiced Tantra, I was like, oh, because apparently her old partner would drag her to these like tantric sex workshops, and insist that they be like polyamorous. And she was like, I had to end the relationship. Like we were just so incompatible. But when you started talking about Tantra and one of the first things you said was that you were celibate for your practice, I was like, oh, like, well, what's Tantra then? Because that's not what I thought it was. And she was like, we were staying together, so she actually saw me like doing my chanting practice and everything, and she loved it. And I love that. Like she'd never seen this stuff before. But she could feel that like, yeah, like there's a transformative aspect to this. There's like a fire that this practice generates, that can give like freedom to the human being. And I wish people would know that. Like Tantra is about, this is something I wrote in my journal once. Like Tantra is about setting yourself on fire until you know that you are God. Like that is what Tantra is.
Mm.
So
Mm.
where does the Western sexualization, why does that get thrown on to Tantra?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good
Okay.
question.
There's two parts to this because one, there is an erotic aspect to Indian Tantra. Much of the poetry is erotic. There are sexual practices. And there is also Kundalini Shakti. It's dealing with Kundalini Shakti. So Kundalini Shakti, Shakti in the body, which every human being has, that is what shows up in this realm as sexual energy. But if you like really like follow it back to its, source, like it's just Kundalini Shakti moving in the body. That Shakti can be used to create things in the world, and sex falls under that umbrella, or it can be used to liberate the human being. So that's when you get this like upward movement of Shakti.
It's like a
So
transmogrification. Like, what's that word? Like alchemizing it or something.
it's
Sorry.
alchemy. It's all alchemy.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's what I mean when I talk about fire. Like you're setting yourself on fire. It's like you're intentionally like reversing that power, that energy in the body to go in the right direction so that it can turn into like you're deleting your I love what you said before. You're deleting memory so that you have space for like insight and wisdom. And
And
that's
the
what
fire is purifying. Like
it's
cult,
purifying.
like nobody go play with actual fire. Jeez Louise. Sometimes you got to give a caveat to things, but fire symbolically is purifying, and I bet you that when that alchemical process probably feels very burning like sometimes.
It
The
is.
fire of purification to purify to the true pure light, that's not like impulsive and driven and and yeah, like it's weird. Well, you're kidding around a moment ago. Like I really don't want to judge people that are like super sexually active. That's not, I literally don't want to judge people that they're finding themselves through that. And they've got lots of partners or a few or whatever, as long as nobody's hurting anyone.
Yeah.
Um, but the insight that well, I could take all this same energy that is friggin' endless that I'm just going and expending doing this. And what happens if I turn it inward, alchemize it to a purifying force within my being? Sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And actually I'll just make a quick like comment there because you talked about not wanting to judge people who
Yeah,
like that's an important part of their like value system. Like this is what brings them joy. Like I believe that too.
yeah,
No judgment there. It's when you combine it with this like volatile energy, like Kundalini Shakti, when you are trying
yeah,
to rouse that power through fucking around and finding out,
yeah.
you're going to cause a lot of
There's
damage.
so much room. No wonder it's like protected and you're careful about it because yeah, that seems like especially with a topic like that with such a powerful alchemical process, there's so much room for like for some reason it was coming to mind all the problems that could arise from like suppression. Like you get somebody going into the temple and they don't even maybe know it themselves, but they're like edge lording or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or not, what's the term? Edging or whatever, like getting as close as they can. Like they're still identified with the erotic nature of it or something. They're not seeing the true purpose of it. And it seems like there's room for misunderstanding, and that's why you got to be careful.
Exactly. And there's more than room for misunderstanding. There's room to really hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Um, People go crazy. And you can also die. It can kill you.
Oh my God. Like,
Serious. It's
oh, that's
serious
so
stuff.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why like that's another thing I wish I could like tell more people. I'm like, you talk about Kundalini, and people throw that word around all the time. It doesn't happen all the time. I remember actually on this same trip, I was talking to this woman who she was Swedish, and she'd been to some of these like I don't know, workshops through like the Burning Man community in Stockholm. And they were trying to teach how to raise Kundalini. And she's like, oh, why is it not moving? Why is it not moving? And I told her, I'm like, Kundalini rises if she wants to. You can't make
Yeah.
her do anything. She is Shakti. She's the goddess. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
work like that. And if you try to like, raise it without really being ready, like your whole system will go haywire. It's
Yeah. It's like
serious
diffusing a
stuff.
bomb or dealing
Yeah.
with plutonium. Like, because here's the thing, like I imagine somebody comes in and they're like, I'm the best practitioner of this. And it's like, because people range. Like some people probably have very low sex drives, and some people got like burning hot sun, you know, sex drives. And it's weird because there seems to be some sort of like, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just gonna go on a tiny tangent here, but like imagine somebody out there who's like they're Don Juan or something. Like they're super sexually driven and active and everything. And it's like if you channeled that, if you had the desire to alchemize that, you that would be a powerful force to wield within you towards this purification process. And then maybe that's why sometimes there are maybe aspects of it that sort of stir that energy that get misunderstood. Like, let's cultivate a little bit of that energy so that we can manipulate it into or like alchemicalize it into something pure. Am I like I'm just hypothesizing here and
No,
sort
but
of
that's what you're doing in Tantra. You're alchemizing that energy towards your own enlightenment.
yeah. Some
Yeah.
people maybe there's got a totally different path though, like because take somebody that was like asexual, like honestly, like you know what I mean? They don't really have that and they're trying something. They're like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm not burning. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Well,
burn.
you're if you're going to become enlightened, then if you're going to become enlightened, you're always going to burn. And
in some
asexual
way.
person can do that. It just means that perhaps their eroticism is being expressed differently. Like maybe they're an artist, or maybe they've
Right.
created really cool like a technology. Like
Right, right, right,
that
right. Okay.
impetus is expressed in many different ways.
And that still falls under the that
It's all
still falls
creation.
on
It's all
that's ta
creative energy. Yeah.
and that's tantra still?
Y yes, you know what?
Tantric?
Yeah, Tantra covers all aspects of life.
Tantra?
So, yeah, like if you take if you're an artist, if you're asexual and you're an artist and you're creating like all this beautiful art, and you take that energy and you like alchemize it towards your own awakening, that's Tantra.
Okay. Yeah, that
Oh.
man, you should teach this stuff.
Maybe one day.
So you've got your book. What was that like creating your book? Was it fun to make a book? Are you psyched about what's in there? What can you say about that?
Oh, I'm still working on it. It's been Oh, yeah, I have so much to say about this. I've been working on it for 2 years. It's been such an intense project, and it's been a process of surrender because every time I would sit down and try to write it, I just sometimes like the words would not come, or I knew what I wanted to write, but it just wouldn't happen. And I realized like it's really up to the goddess, when she wants it written, like it'll get done. But like it just felt like, and this is a really personal share, but it just felt like she was the one telling me what to write. And a lot of the teachings came directly from her. She also told me what scriptures to look in, and then I would go and look at that scripture, and I would read exactly what she had told me. And that's been its own process of purification. Again, we're talking about creative energy. Like for me, writing this book is a creative act. And I'm a very different person from who I was 2 years ago when I got the idea to write this book. Actually, let me tell you an interesting story. One day in February, I remember I said out loud, I'm going to write a book about Shiva and Shakti. I didn't fully know what it would be about. 4 days later, I lost my job, as if, like my life was opening up so that I could actually write this book. And I've had to be really committed to actually, we talked about purification, purify myself so that I could channel the book correctly and not like put my own like bias or my own like BS in it.
Hmm.
And one of the things I really wanted to be careful about is I want to make sure I'm writing the truth instead of distorting something. So I will be patient enough with myself to allow the purification to happen so that I can actually like get this message across. And in my daily sadhana, my daily prayer to the goddess, I actually ask her, like whatever it is you want me to write. Sorry, this makes me emotional, but whatever it is you want me to write, like let me get it right. Let me
Mhm.
let me write what you want me to write and get it right, and let it be of benefit to people, instead of it being nonsense.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, that's great. Well, Mia, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show and being with us today and sharing everything you've done. One thing we like to do here is let our guests have kind of like the last say. So if there's something you want to leave with our audience, we'll open the floor for you there. And then after that, maybe you can let them know where they can find you, what you got going on, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think I end every podcast I've done like this, but I mean it every time I say it, which is like I'm so grateful to you both, James and Justin, for bringing me on, and opening up this space for me to speak and talk about my work. I genuinely enjoyed this conversation with you both. Like I
Yeah.
love talking to people. I love meeting new people. You guys are so amusing and so sweet. And I just really enjoyed listening to your perspective. Like I can tell our perspectives are different, but that's what makes this conversation so good. And yeah, just thank you so much for this opportunity. And I hope we get to stay in touch too. You can always reach out to me with questions or, you know, anything really. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge.
Yeah.
This was great.
And let our audience know where they can find you.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm in maybe a projected book release date. I don't know. I don't.
Hopefully later this year. I'm aiming for later this year, but I have a mailing list. So I'll give you guys my Linktree link.
Mhm.
And through that, you can find the link to sign up for my mailing list. I am on TikTok. My handle is yogini.m. So you guys can add that as well to
Yeah,
the.
yeah.
I'm actually currently not on YouTube or Instagram just yet, but I'll be making those shortly. Maybe I'll just make those in time so that you can add it to the podcast whenever it goes up. I'll let you guys know. But thank you. Thank you both so, so very much.
Hey, thank you.
Fantastic. This is great. Thanks for being on the show.